The industrial city of Ohio no longer smells like flowers. There is only smoke and the screech of metal whenever wind sweeps through the skeletons of abandoned factories. Once, this place had a springtime. Lavender bloomed along fences. Bees buzzed around grapevines behind porches. But after the global energy crisis, everything began to fade. Parks were flattened to build more automatic charging stations. Real flowers were replaced with LED panels. Pollinating insects were listed under non-essential costs. Lab 3, where Mira and Sam had spent over 4 years tirelessly researching the dynamics of urban pollination, was shut down on a morning without warning. Taped to the glass door was a hastily printed notice. Funding revoked due to budget reallocation for the artificial air filtration project. Equipment will be sealed within 48 hours. Sam clenched the metal edge of the workbench as he read. Mira stood still, gloves still on, eyes blank. Their project, once considered a fragile hope to bring bees back into the city, was now dismissed as romanticizing nature, commercially unviable. Their models of biosynthetic bees that used electrostatic signals to detect urban flowers no longer held value in the eyes of the board. Investors had shifted their money to drone pollination, systems expensive, soulless, but sellable to other cities. Mira walked to the line of artificial hives elegant, translucent cubes storing thousands of sensor data points, never tested. She bowed her head, gently tapping a hollow hive. "I'm sorry. We arrived too late." Sam was unscrewing the control panels by hand, face smudged with dust, jaw clenched. In his life, he had only ever loved 3 things: bees, electronics, and Mira. Losing one of those, he wouldn't allow himself to lose the others. As they packed the final notebook into a cardboard box, Mira whispered, her voice low, but each word crystal clear. "If no one believes in them, then we must make them visible." Sam looked up. For the first time in months, his eyes lit up not because of a new formula, but because of something old that had waited long enough to return. "We'll try, out there." The dream once sealed inside the lab would no longer be a theory. It would follow them beyond these concrete walls to a place where even a single real flower would be a place worthy of beginning again. On the 10th floor of an aging apartment complex, between gray concrete walls and the unending noise of traffic, Sam and Mira began again, not with a lab, but with a balcony exactly 2 square meters wide. That balcony had once been just a place for tenants to dry laundry or rest a folding chair. Now, it became the living space for a dream that had been pushed out of the city's budget. Sam used recycled industrial plastic trays to plant greenery. Mira brought back organic soil from a tiny grocery store that still believed in honest farming. They mounted 3 artificial beehives onto the wall printed from an old 3D printer. Inside were sensor chips they programmed themselves, wired into a cracked tablet. Nothing fancy, but enough to begin. Every morning, Mira opened the balcony door. Truck engines, fire alarms, and construction echoed like chaotic background music. Still, she carefully watered each drop into the tiny sprouting purple flowers, shielding each leaf from the floating dust in the air. She whispered to them, as if comforting fragile lives daring to rise from the city's ruins. Sam hunched over his lenses, adjusting the camera angles. He placed biomimetic Beastiny robots that vibrated and heated like real ones into the hive, recording plant and environment responses. Sometimes he stayed silent for hours, lips pressed tight, but his eyes sparkled like a child conducting their first experiment. And then, one March morning, just as Mira finished watering, she saw something that tightened her chest. A tiny green sprout pushing up through the recycled soil. Trembling in the polluted breeze, it stood not strong but present, a quiet reply from nature. Mira knelt, cradling the tray, as if it were a newborn. "I didn't think they'd make it," she whispered. Sam stepped beside her, looking at the sprout, then at Mira. Neither said more. They simply stood together beside that first sign of Liferial, Fragilian, a balcony in a city where no birds sang, no real bees buzzed. But that day, they knew. Life still chose to return if someone dared to keep a small enough space for it to begin again. Summer wind brushed the sun-scorched concrete corridors of the old building, bringing with it the heavy scent of dust, melting plastic, and unspoken resistance. At first, people only looked at the couple with curiosity. What are they doing? Beehives? On the 10th floor balcony? But that curiosity quickly turned into worry, and then into vocal opposition. One evening, a downstairs neighbor knocked angrily. "I have a kid. No one wants to get stung," they said. "Bees are bees. They've got stingers. Who's going to be responsible?" Mira stood behind Sam, fists clenched. She tried explaining about stingless native bees, about their monitoring systems, about how bees communicate through static electricity, not aggression. But no one listened. Scientific words dissolved against walls of old fears. Then came the building council's letter. Immediate suspension of the experimental model that may pose risk to the community, and a demand to remove all hives within 72 hours. Mira collapsed on the kitchen floor, sobbing. The words cut through their dream like blades. Sam said nothing. He walked to the balcony and found one of the hives shattered, broken by someone's stick. Honey leaked across the floor. Miniature robotic bees lay bent, wings snapped, wires tangled like spilled entrails. He knelt, gently wiping the honey, collecting broken pieces as if stitching together a wound no one else could see. That night, only the kitchen's yellow light remained. Mira wept quietly. Sam held her hand, his fingers sticky with glue and honey. "We're not doing anything wrong," he said, voice low but firm. "We're just planting seeds into the wind." "But what if no one wants them to grow?" Mira choked out. "Then we'll be the first to wait," Sam said. "If a dream were easy, maybe it wasn't worth dreaming at all." They didn't take down the hives. Instead, the next morning, Mira added a small sign beside the balcony. "The first petal never blooms from easy soil." And so, they continued not to prove anyone wrong, but simply to stay true to the kindest part within themselves. One July morning, the city's sky was still heavy with lead, and the air thick with smoke from the oil refinery a few blocks away. Mira opened the balcony door out of habit, watering can in hand, eyes still drowsy from another long night spent calibrating sensor data with Sam. But something was different this morning. Right in the recycled soil tray they'd tended for the past 2 months, mixed with crushed eggshells, coffee grounds, and a bit of countryside dirt they'd managed to bring back, a sunflower had bloomed. Not large, not perfect, but its petals shone a brilliant yellow, as if borrowing sunlight itself, radiating against the backdrop of smog and concrete dust. Mira froze. She didn't dare breathe, afraid even the smallest movement might dissolve the flower like a dream. Her eyes blinked fast, then brimmed with tears. She knelt, hands gently cupping the edge of the tray, and wept not from weakness, but from the rawness of seeing life again, not in theory, not on paper, but in scent, in color, in breath. Sam stepped behind her, placing a hand on her shoulder. He looked at the flower, then at Mira, his voice soft like a promise from a world that used to believe. "They've come, don't you hear them?" Mira nodded. She didn't have to ask who, because she knew. Sam was talking about the small creatures they had once studied, once nurtured inside simulation models, once called the final hope for pollination. A faint buzzing sound rose. Just one note, but it made Mira's heart explode. A beno from the artificial hive, not a synthetic drone, but a real bee, hovered near the yellow flower. It touched the stigma gently, as if confirming, "This place is worth landing." In a city where no one believed that real flowers could bloom again, or real bees might return, Sam and Mira had done what no one thought possible. Not through a laboratory, not with funding, but with belief, persistence, and a tiny balcony carved out of a wall of concrete and smog. That flower for them wasn't just a flower. It was a message from nature. I will return if you leave me a place to bloom. The first buzz rose on a quiet morning, not from machines, not from a recording, but a real sound, tender and alive, like a forgotten melody rediscovered. Mira was watering the plants. Sam was checking the sensors. They both looked up at the same moment when they heard it, and in that instant, neither of them moved. High above the smoke-smudged sky, a small dot fluttered it in, then another. A group of native bees, survivors from the distant western mountains, were arriving. They circled the narrow balcony like golden leaves in flight, dancing among the purple salvia, baby sunflowers, and scrappy lavender Mira had nurtured day after day. Every motion was like a whisper. One bee flew closest, hovered, and gently touched the blooming sunflower. Mira held her breath. The bee trembled its wings, extended its proboscis to the flower's heart, and, in that instant, the whole world seemed to pause. The bee hovered briefly, then ascended, not departing, but circling the balcony once before disappearing beyond the rooftop edge. "Perhaps it won't return," Mira murmured, her voice quivering with emotion. Yet within 5 minutes, the entire swarm came back. Not just one, but 10, 20, then over 30 bees, their buzzing forming an unexpectedly gentle symphony. They alighted on each flower as if memorizing, marking, conveying to one another, "We've found a place still alive." The sound resonated across the upper floors of the old apartment building. Balcony doors across the way creaked open. Then another. An elderly woman stepped out, shielding her eyes from the sun, leaning in to listen. A young couple paused their breakfast, carrying their child onto the balcony. "Mommy, there really are bees!" The child's exclamation rang out, pure as a bell, awakening something long dormant in the hearts of the adults. Sam glanced around, then turned to Mira. She said nothing, but her eyes sparkled, a tear traced down her cheek. Their dreamants buried in the archives of their old university, in deleted data log swaths now airborne. Flying on real wings, sowing sweetness into the hearts of those who had believed nature had abandoned this place forever. The sky remained smoky. The city had yet to turn green again. But that buzzingit was the first proof that nature had never forgotten its way back. All it needed was someone willing to preserve a balcony, a flower, and a belief. And they, Sam and Mira, had done just that. From a balcony barely 2 square meters in size, something greater was sprouting, not just flowers or bees, but a belief gradually awakening within the gray city. The first to change was the elderly man from the floor below, the one who had previously filed a petition to dismantle the setup, fearing for his grandchild's safety. One morning, as Sam was installing additional humidity sensors, the man knocked on their door holding a small cloth bag. Inside were wildflower seeds. "I found these in my late wife's old box," he said, gazing into the distance. "She used to grow these on our balcony. Once," she mentioned. The buzzing of bees made her feel less lonely. Sam said nothing, merely smiled and accepted the bag. Mira planted them that very day. Next came the high school teacher from nearby. She knocked, hesitantly asking if she could film a short video for her online biology class. "Textbooks have long omitted real bees," she sighed, "but I want my students to know they're still here." Mira welcomed her in. Together, they captured simple scenes: bees touching petals, sunlight glinting off droplets of nectar. In the corner of the video, Mira gently touched the soil, introducing each flower species they had cultivated. 3 days later, the local newspaper published an article titled, "10th Floor Balcony Calls Bees Back to the City." Accompanying it was a photo of a bee perched on a salvia bloom, with a backdrop of smog-shrouded skyscrapers. The hashtag number Honey of Hope began to spread. Residents shared images of their balconies from the 5th floor, the 20th, even rooftop terraces where flower pots were beginning to appear. Some had no bees yet, but they wrote, "We've planted first. Perhaps one day they'll come." One evening, Mira received a handwritten lettera rarity in this digital age. It was from a 10-year-old girl named Claire, born deaf. "I can't hear the bees," the scrawled lines read, "but every time one comes close, I see the flowers tremble. I imagine their sound like a heart laughing." Mira held the letter, tears silently falling onto the paper's edge. She turned to Sam, whispering, "We're truly making a difference. Not just bringing bees back, but restoring the feeling that the world still holds gentleness." And from a balcony that once seemed solitary, the buzzing had woven its way into people's hearts, not through speakers, but via real petals, quivering each time a tiny creature returned, bearing the message, nature still exists. Hope still exists. The One Balcony, One Hive movement didn't commence with a grand speech or a major media campaign. It began with a sprout, a petal's tremble, a bee's gentle touch on a purple stamen, and a community learning to listen to nature right where they lived. After the initial article, the 10th floor balcony where Sam and Mira lived became an unexpected destination for residents of the building. A young woman brought a pot of lavender. A college student secretly carried planting soil up to the rooftop. An elderly man left a basket of eggs at their door. "Thank you for reminding me of the scent of spring." Then, the once barren balconies began to transform. A cluster of wild daisies sprouted on the 8th floor. The 12th floor hung cut plastic bottles as water troughs for bees. A cafe on the corner displayed a small sign on its window. "We serve bee-friendly drinks. No pesticides, no artificial sweeteners." Below, a cute drawing of a smiling bee. Sam and Mira couldn't knock on every door themselves. Instead, they wrote a guide, "Flower Corridors and Urban Beehives," a small handbook containing methods for planting seasonal flowers, designing artificial beehives from recycled materials, and caring for bees in a concrete environment. They organized the first workshop on the rooftop, where the evening sun stretched long and the street noise below faded into a distant background. Participants included students, retirees, construction engineers, people from all walks of life, but sharing the same question: how do we bring the bees back? Among those sitting in a circle that day, Mira was taken aback to see a familiar face, the man who had once destroyed their experimental beehive. He approached, holding a rough wooden plank, and apologized. "I was afraid," he said. "But my daughter told me, if there are no bees, flowers won't bloom. And if flowers don't bloom, the world will be a sad place." Sam remained silent, then extended his hand. "Let's rebuild. This time, together." They rebuilt the beehive using the very wood that had once been broken. A new beginning, not just for the tiny bees, but for a community that once believed nature had no place to return to. As the sun set, casting a golden hue over the balconies just beginning to bloom, Mira smiled, placing her hand on the new beehive. "We've sown something, not just in the soil, but in people's hearts." One May morning, the sun quietly rose over the Ohio sky. Its light pierced through the city's perpetual smog, illuminating the dew still clinging to the petals of purple salvia flowers. On the 10th floor balcony, Sam poured water into the plant trays, while Mira carefully checked the temperature inside the artificial beehive. Everything felt like a simple ritual, but that morning, something was different. Sam suddenly paused. He looked to the right, then to the left. In that moment, both of them froze. From the 9th to the 12th floor, from the small balcony corner near the stairs to the corridor on the other side of the building, flowers bloomed. Not artificial flowers, not plastic ornamental plants, but real blossoms, lavender, wild daisies, mini sunflowers. and among the petals just beginning to open, bees flew, one by one in small groups, flying low, buzzing softly, like a gentle melody the city had long forgotten. A boy from the floor below looked up, waving, "Hey, the bee came to my place twice this morning." Mira looked down, smiling, eyes glistening with tears. Sam stepped closer, placing his hand on his wife's shoulder. Neither said a word. They just stood silently, as if witnessing a miracle that required no fireworks or fanfare, just a trembling petal, a buzzing sound, and a balcony patient enough to start first. In the distance, an old pesticide-spraying drone had its wings removed, repurposed as a water trough for bees. A small sign hung in front of a preschool classroom. Today, the children learn how to greet bees. If this story stirred something in your heart, don't let it stop here, Heaventies. We live in a time when the smallest choices can create the biggest changes. Like Sam and Mira, maybe you don't have a lab or a field or a team, but maybe you have a balcony, a backyard, or just a window ledge. Maybe all you need is a flower pot and the courage to begin. Because sometimes the most powerful movements start from quiet places. Let this be your call to action. Plant a flower. Leave a bowl of water with pebbles for bees to land. Learn how you can support pollinators in your city. Share this story to remind others that hope can bloom even in the most unlikely places. Like this video to support more stories that inspire environmental change. Share to help others believe that even a small act matters. Subscribe to join a growing community of people who choose hope over helplessness. And don't forget to turn on notifications, because every story has the power to change a heart, and every heart can help save a future. Together, let's make space for the bees to return.